Let's start. Right now, the total debt on planet Earth stands at over $307 trillion. The total amount of money that physically and digitally exists across every bank account, every wallet, every central vault in every country on the planet is roughly $40 trillion. If every single government, corporation, and human being alive pooled every last dollar, euro, yen, and peso into one enormous pile, it would cover barely 13% of what is owed. The other 87% does not exist. It has never existed, and it was never supposed to. This is not a policy failure. It is not the result of reckless spending or irresponsible consumers. It is a mathematical certainty that was baked into the design of the global financial system from the very beginning. A viewer recently left a comment that cracked the whole thing wide open. They ask one deceptively simple question. If every country on Earth owes money, who exactly do they owe it to? The answer traces back to a quiet afternoon on Lombard Street in 1660s London. A goldsmith named Edward Backwell was sitting in his shop, staring at a locked iron vault full of other people's gold, when he had an idea that would permanently break the mathematics of human civilization. In the 1660s, London was booming, trade was exploding, merchants were getting rich, but there was a problem. Gold was heavy, dangerous to carry, and easy to steal. So wealthy merchants started leaving their gold with goldsmiths, men who already had the strongest vaults in the city. Edward Backwell, a meticulous man in a dark wool coat, was one of the most trusted goldsmiths in London. Merchants would hand over their gold, and Backwell would hand them a paper receipt, a simple promise that said, "I am holding your gold. Come back any time and I will return it." Instead of dragging heavy gold bars across the city to buy a shipment of silk, merchants started simply handing over their paper receipts. The person receiving a receipt knew the gold was sitting safely in Backwell's vault. The paper was as good as gold. But then Backwell noticed something extraordinary. Nobody ever came back for their gold at the same time. Hundreds of merchants had deposited gold into his vault, but on any given day, only a tiny handful would show up to withdraw. The rest left their gold sitting there, untouched, month after month. And this is the moment that broke everything. Edward Backwell, staring at a vault full of gold that nobody was using, made a decision that would reshape the entire architecture of human commerce. He began writing new receipts for gold that had already been promised to someone else. He started lending out gold he did not own. A merchant would walk in and ask for a loan. Backwell would not hand him physical gold from the vault. He would simply write a brand new paper receipt, a receipt claiming there was gold backing it, and hand it over. The merchant left happy. Backwell collected interest on the loan, and the original depositors had absolutely no idea their gold had been promised twice. At first, Backwell lent cautiously. He kept 90% of the real gold in the vault and only lent receipts worth 10%. But the profits made him bolder. He kept 50%, then 30, then 10. Eventually, Backwell and every other goldsmith on Lombard Street were writing paper receipts for gold that was 10, 20, even 30 times more than the physical gold they actually held. They had invented money from nothing. As long as all the depositors never showed up on the same day to demand their gold back, the system worked perfectly. It was the most profitable arrangement in history, and it had one consequence that nobody noticed for centuries. Every single new dollar that entered the economy had been born as someone's debt. The goldsmiths of Lombard Street had stumbled onto a formula so powerful that governments couldn't resist formalizing it. In 1694, the Bank of England was established on the exact same principle. It could issue paper money far exceeding the gold it actually held. The money was created the instant someone borrowed it. The money was destroyed the instant they paid it back. But there was a catch that nobody talked about. When Backwell wrote a receipt for £100 of gold that did not exist and lent it to a merchant, he expected £110 back, the original 100 plus £10 of interest. But those extra £10 were never created. Backwell only wrote a receipt for 100. The £10 of interest did not exist anywhere in the system. The only way the merchant could find those extra £10 was to take them from the limited pool of money already circulating, money that other people needed to pay off their own loans. This means that in a system where all money is created as loans and all loans require interest, there is mathematically always more debt in existence than money. Always. It is not possible for everyone to pay what they owe. Someone, somewhere, must always default. The system doesn't have a flaw. The system is the flaw. For centuries, one fragile safety net prevented this design from spiraling into infinity: gold. As long as every paper dollar was theoretically backed by a fixed amount of physical gold, there was a ceiling on how much debt could be created. Banks could only stretch so far before they hit the hard limit of the metal in their vaults. But one man saw through the illusion before anyone else. In 1965, Charles de Gaulle, the towering, iron-willed president of France, called a press conference that shook the global financial order. Standing behind a wooden podium, de Gaulle publicly accused the United States of running the exact same scheme as the goldsmiths of Lombard Street. America was printing far more paper dollars than it had gold to back them. De Gaulle did not just talk, he acted. He ordered the French treasury to convert hundreds of millions of US dollar reserves into physical gold, and he demanded it be shipped directly from the vaults of the Federal Reserve in New York to Paris. Other nations watched. They started demanding their gold back too. The reserves at Fort Knox began to drain. By 1971, the crisis had reached critical mass. Richard Nixon, a sweating man behind a mahogany desk in the Oval Office, was cornered. The Vietnam War was devouring billions. Foreign governments were draining the gold reserves. The math was collapsing. Nixon had two choices: admit the United States could not honor its own currency, or remove the gold ceiling entirely. On August 15, 1971, Nixon appeared on national television and announced that the United States dollar would no longer be convertible to gold. The gold standard was dead. From that moment forward, the US dollar, and by extension, every major currency on earth, was backed by nothing physical. It was backed only by a promise that the government would honor the value of the paper. The last mathematical constraint on money creation had been erased. Banks could now create debt without a ceiling. Governments could borrow without a natural limit, and the numbers started accelerating at a speed Edward Backwell could never have imagined. In 1971, the total US national debt was $398 billion. By 2000, it had ballooned to $5.6 trillion. By 2020, $27 trillion. Today, it surpasses $36 trillion and is growing by roughly $1 trillion every 100 days. The debt does not shrink. It cannot shrink, because shrinking the debt means destroying the money supply, and destroying the money supply means economic collapse. The only way to keep the system alive is to create more debt, faster, forever. Fast forward back to today. That viewer asked, if every country owes money, who do they owe it to? The answer is now brutally clear. They owe it to the mechanism that created the money in the first place. When a bank approves your mortgage, it does not reach into a vault and pull out someone else's savings. It types a number into a computer. That number did not exist 5 seconds ago. It exists now because you promised to pay it back, with interest, for the next 30 years. Your debt is the money. Without your debt, that money ceases to exist. You are not borrowing from a pool of existing wealth. You are the pool. The entire global economy is a closed loop that requires perpetually increasing debt to generate the money needed to service the existing debt. It is not a crisis waiting to happen. It is the operating system. If you want to keep uncovering the hidden mechanics behind the financial systems that quietly run your life, make sure to hit subscribe, because the next time someone tells you the national debt will be paid off someday, remember the goldsmith on Lomford Street? He wrote a receipt for gold that did not exist, charged interest on the fiction, and called it banking. 360 years later, the entire world is playing his game. The only difference is that now there is no gold left to pretend is in the vault.